She thought the hardest part of studying abroad would be learning a new language or fitting into a new routine. But on her very first day, before she even sat down, she felt it. The stares, sharp and heavy, the whispers that faded when she turned her head. It wasn't her accent, it wasn't her clothes, it was her skin. She smiled anyway, gripping her notebook like a shield, not knowing that a single classroom would soon make headlines halfway across the world. What happened inside those walls wasn't just a lesson in education, it was a test of humanity. And by the time it ended, no one saw her the same way again. Before that morning, her life was simple, almost predictable. Amara was 17, bright, curious, and endlessly optimistic. She'd grown up in a small neighborhood where everyone knew her name, the kind of place where strangers waved and friends shared meals like family. When she earned a scholarship to study abroad, it felt like a dream come true, a doorway to the life her parents had always hoped for her. She packed her favorite books, a photo of her family, and a heart full of hope. The new country looked like something from a postcard. Clean streets, smiling faces, the promise of opportunity. For a moment, she believed she'd found her place. But beneath the polite smiles and quick greetings, something felt off, a silence that lingered too long, a question in people's eyes she couldn't quite name. Little did she know, that uneasy feeling was just the beginning of a lesson no classroom could ever prepare her for. At first, Amara tried to brush it off. The whispers, the double takes, the questions that came coated in smiles but stung like nettles. Where are you really from? Can I touch your hair? The curiosity seemed harmless, almost flattering, but slowly those tiny pricks turned into something sharper. In group projects, her ideas were met with silence until someone repeated them, and suddenly they were brilliant. At the dorm cafeteria, she'd sit down and the table would grow quiet. Her roommate, once friendly, stopped sharing late-night talks, claiming she was busy. And when one of her teachers called her articulate with surprise in his voice, Amara laughed politely, wondering what he expected her to sound like before that day. The turning point came one rainy morning when she found her locker covered in slurs. Ugly words sprawled in permanent marker, cruel in their confidence. Her knees weakened, a cold rush spreading through her chest. The hallway went quiet as students passed, some whispering, others looking away. No one said a word, not even the teacher who saw it first. She wanted to scream, but instead she tore down the papers, stuffed them into her bag, and kept walking. Her heart pounded as she wondered if standing up for herself would only make it worse. That silence, that choice between her dignity and her peace, followed her like a ghost. Then came the class debate. The topic was immigration, and voices grew heated. A student across the room laughed, turning toward her with a smirk. "Well, you'd know about that, right?" The class chuckled hesitantly. Eyes darted toward the teacher, who did nothing. Amara could feel every heartbeat echo in her ears. She wanted to vanish, but something inside refused to shrink this time. She raised her hand, her voice trembling but firm, and spoke, a calm storm of truth that cracked the air wide open. When she finished, the room sat in stunned quiet. Yet even as her words hung there, Amara saw a teacher's calculating glance, a few rolled eyes, phones coming out discreetly. She didn't know it yet, but someone was recording. By the next day, her speech had gone viral, twisted online, cut and spliced into clips that stripped away her pain and turned it into spectacle. Strangers called her a victim, a liar, a hero, depending on what part of the internet they lived in. The school held meetings, but not to comfort her. They wanted damage control. Alone in her dorm room, Amara stared at her reflection, wondering how telling the truth could make her a target. The world seemed to be watching her, but not seeing her. And somewhere between those sleepless nights and the buzzing of her phone, she knew she had to make a choice: stay silent and survive the storm, or stand taller and let it strike.
The breaking point came on a gray morning when Amara was summoned to the principal's office. Her stomach churned as she walked the silent hallway, every step echoing like a countdown. Inside sat 3 adults, the principal, a counselor, and her favorite teacher, eyes downcast. On the table was a printed photo from the viral video, her face frozen mid-sentence, mouth open in defiance. They said words like disruption, misunderstanding, and consequences. They said the school's reputation had suffered. They said she should apologize, to calm things down, to make everyone comfortable again. Amara stared at them, disbelief tangled with exhaustion. The people who were supposed to protect her wanted her to be small, to swallow her truth so others could feel at ease. The same community that had praised diversity posters on its walls now asked her to be invisible. She tried to speak, but her throat locked. The principal's voice, measured, polite, filled the silence. Sometimes peace requires compromise. Something shattered inside her then. Not anger, not even sadness, just clarity, the kind that burns through fear and leaves only truth behind. She took a breath, steady, deliberate. "Then it's not peace," she said quietly. "It's silence." The room froze. Her teacher's eyes lifted, glossy with regret. The principal leaned back, folding his hands, and in that single breath of stillness, Amara knew what she had become. A threat to comfort, a mirror no one wanted to look into. When she left the office, tears blurred the hallway lights. She didn't know if she'd be expelled, if people would still whisper, or if the internet would move on. But she knew this: she would not apologize for being seen. And as she stepped outside into the rain, every drop against her skin felt like a heartbeat, her own, relentless, alive. The rain that day never really stopped. It simply changed form. Sometimes it was the steady drizzle outside her window. Sometimes it was the quiet ache she carried in her chest. Yet from that day on, Amara walked the campus differently. Not lighter, but firmer, as if her footsteps carved space for those who would come after her. Her stories spread beyond the school. Some dismissed her as too sensitive, others called her brave. But for every cruel comment, there were countless messages from students, some she'd never met, saying thank you for speaking what they had always felt but never dared to say. The same video that had once made her a target now made her a symbol. When the semester ended, she took down the photo of her family and repacked her life. She hadn't changed the world, but she had changed something within herself. And maybe that's how change really starts, not in the headlines, but in the quiet refusal to bend. Back home, she visited her old high school to speak with younger students. Standing at that podium, she realized she no longer told her story just to heal. She told it to remind others that silence is the most dangerous comfort of all. Because what happened to Amara wasn't a single story in a single school. It was a reflection of something deeper, something that still shadows classrooms, offices, and cities everywhere. So the question doesn't end with what happened next, it begins with what happens now. How many more voices will be ignored before listening becomes more than a slogan? And when another child walks through those same doors, will the world have finally learned to see her not as a threat, but as a promise?